Hi, I'm Stacie Bloomfield. Welcome back to making a mini holiday collection so that you can make art to put in your portfolio. You can use that art for pitching for art licensing, or you can use that art on your own products, which is what I do. We have already planned out our designs with our thumbnail sketches. We've made a hero illustration, and we talked about pattern making and our winter floral. If you watched the last few videos of this series, today is going to be a piece of cake because we're essentially redoing what we did in the previous video, but in a much simplified manner.
We're using fewer motifs, we're spacing out our patterns because they are low volume patterns, and we are focusing on less being more today, where we are creating our blender background pattern. So I'm going to show you two ways that I approach making blenders and backgrounds. The first starts with a good old-fashioned piece of paper and a pen. So oftentimes whenever I'm thinking about the best blenders, I love hand-drawn elements, and sometimes when I'm drawing on my iPad, I can lose a little bit of that spontaneity of the line work. And so I pulled out a piece of paper and I just started doodling. I drew some lines, some little dash marks, some polka dots, and then I drew a couple of, frankly, kind of messy snowflakes. But after I drew all of my little shapes, I decided I wanted to move forward with the snowflakes as being potentially a low volume pattern for my collection. So instead of using a scanner, I pulled out my iPad and I simply took a photo near natural light, near a window of that piece of paper, and then I emailed that photo to myself. Literally, that's all I did, and that's enough. Then I went into Adobe Illustrator and again created my swatch, my 8x8 inch swatch, and I went and placed that photograph of the snowflakes and resized it so it would fit on my canvas. I also brought in the swatches from my design brief and recreated my color palette so that I would easily be able to recolor my pattern. So after I recolored my pattern and after I did the live trace, and after I deleted the dash lines that I didn't want to use, so I just selected them and deleted them, and I ungrouped my pattern and ended up with my 3 vectorized snowflakes, I was able to move around my snowflakes freely and then start making my repeat pattern. So all I do is I essentially copy and paste my snowflakes and rotate them. Copy, paste, rotate, and I move them around and play around with them until I feel like I have a pretty happy pattern. And then I went ahead and tested my pattern out. I recolored it, just not even the final colors, but I recolored my pattern, and then I tested my pattern by creating a swatch, creating a rectangle, and dragging that new swatch into my rectangle. And as you can see, it wasn't super evenly distributed, my snowflakes, so I went back and I rearranged some of my snowflakes until I felt like the distribution was more even. And after I played around with that for a few minutes, I retested my swatch and I was much happier with the layout. So I played around with a few other colorways until I settled on a simple aqua with a white background. So I saved that pattern as an Adobe Illustrator file. Then I went ahead and exported it as a JPEG by selecting Export, Save for Web. And then I took a look at that and I wondered, is that really the pattern that I want to have be my background pattern? So now I'm going to show you another method that I use sometimes whenever I am making background and blender patterns. And that is by going back to my iPad, and I decided I was going to make a simple stripe. But stripes can be boring if they're just straight lines. So again, hand-drawn elements, hand-drawn lines, that little bit of wiggle can be very compelling whenever you're making a stripe. So this is whenever I love going back to Procreate and using that symmetry tool, because with a stripe, you don't have to worry about the left and right hand side being seamless as much. You have to only worry about the top and the bottom. So what I like to do is go open up in my toolbar, I select Canvas, Edit Drawing Guide, and I go back to that symmetry tool. And instead of doing like I showed you yesterday where I do a vertical symmetry, I change it to a horizontal symmetry. So that means everything I draw on top will reflect on the bottom. So I went ahead and opened up the red color like I used yesterday when I was drawing, and I just start drawing lines. And I start from the top, and the great thing is when I draw from the top and draw towards the center of my canvas, those lines just need to touch in the middle, and then I am left with perfectly reflected lines. And that means anything that happens on top is going to be perfectly positioned on the bottom. If you've ever tried to just hand draw a stripe and then go into Adobe Illustrator and match up the edges, sometimes it's really hard. So this is a way that I make stripes quickly, hand-drawn stripes. So now that I have my entire canvas drawn out, I'm going to go and I'm going to share and export my artwork as a Photoshop file again. And then I'm going to go open it up into Adobe Illustrator. And I'm going to repeat exactly what I just did. I'm going to live trace these lines. I'm going to create my swatch. I'm going to add a background color. I'm going to color my lines, and then I'm going to test my swatch. And take a look at that, guys. I have a perfect stripe, and honestly, this is the fastest way that I like to make my stripe patterns. And then I don't have to worry about trying to match up those top and bottoms of my canvas. So now that I have my stripe, I wanted to go ahead and open up my existing winter floral to see if I like the scale of my stripes next to my winter floral. And the thing I want you to notice is that even though my lines are not evenly distributed, there's movement to it, but there's enough negative space in between those lines that it feels like it's loose and it feels like it is a low volume pattern. So after I have created my swatch and I am happy with the scale of it, I'm going to just play around with colorways until I have a colorway that I'm really happy with. And I think I'm going to go with a simple white background with a red stripe. So after I've done that, I'm going to test it to make sure I'm happy. So because I've made my stripe and I'm pretty happy with the scale, I want to show you though what I would do if I want to change the scale of my stripe. So what I do is I create a rectangle and I fill it with my swatch, my stripe swatch. And then I'm going to go down and right click and click transform. And then I'm going to click scale. And you're going to see the scale menu pop up. And it's really important that whenever you are testing your scale, you select transform pattern and not transform object, because when you select both, the entire square becomes smaller. But if I deselect transform object, then my square remains the same size, and the only thing that has changed is the scale of my pattern. So for me, after I see it smaller, like 50% smaller, I think I'm happy with the original scale of my stripe, so I'm not going to worry about that. I'm happy, and I'm going to save my new swatch here, and I'm going to save it in Adobe Illustrator, and then after that, I'm going to export it as a JPEG so that I can share it easily. So I've saved my pattern, and now I am left with a simple stripe blender. I have my winter floral from yesterday, and then I have my cute little snowman hero. So I have made a little mini collection. So that's it for today. Today is short and sweet and simple. So I want you to think about less being more. Make a few snowflakes, make some stripes, make some hand-drawn polka dots. Maybe even grab some elements from yesterday's secondary pattern and see if you can pull out little bits of it in order to make a really unique blender pattern.
All right, that's it for today. Be sure to leave me a comment with any questions you have and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'll see you in the next video.